Okay, again, so what is contextual inquiry? So before we get to know the term, the methodology, and I think it's good we can understand what's the meaning of context and what's the meaning of inquiry. So the meaning of context means background or environment or framework, a setting, a situation surrounding an event or an individual. So in this room,
You don't have to drink, but just
thank you. Right. So in this room, what would be the context of the room? Okay, so the event of, okay, so now the workshop is taking place, right? Will be an event. And you are every individual, right? So we are situated in this context. So the context means a background environment and also this setting and this situation, right? So what is inquiry? So inquiry means a close examination, close investigation, or in the search of a particular information. So in other words, inquiry means interview, right? But before we get into the definition of contextual inquiry, I think we have to understand about context and inquiry, the meaning of the two terms. So the definition for contextual inquiry, so it means conducting interviews in the field. So we don't conduct interviews in indoor setting or in a lab. So actually the interviews, observations, they take place in the field, in the real environment, in the user's real environment, and sometimes in the workplace by observing or asking questions or inquiring to understand the structure of users' work practices. Right. So since we conduct interviews, observations in the field, in the user's work environment, and in service design, so we conduct interview and observations when users they are using the service. So since the activities take place in the real environment world, so it really helps us capture the things how it really happens, and which would provide us insight to our designs. So this is kind of give you a general idea what is contextual inquiry and meaning of context and meaning of inquiry. So actually, contextual inquiry is a hybrid approach. So basically, it involves direct observations. So it's not indirect observation; it's direct observations, and it involves interview to elicit more details. So actually, contextual inquiries, it can refer to we study real users doing their real task and in a context of a service and of their working practice in the social environment. So those are the key things that you should keep in mind about what is contextual inquiry and what when we conduct contextual inquiry. Those are important components. All right. So next, I want to introduce two concepts. What is ethnography? Do you know ethnography?
You can assume that they don't.
All right. So ethnography. Okay. So ethnography is kind of a qualitative description, not quantitative, qualitative description of a human and social condition based on field observations. So it's a qualitative description of the human in the environment, human interact with the social environment, human interact with people, and based on the observations in the field. So that's kind of a general meaning of ethnography. So ethnography typically, as designer or as a researcher, we go to the field, but without any presumptions about the design ideas. So like yesterday, on this group at here, right? So without speaking to users, without speaking to clients, or without observing what's happening in the real world, right? And you come up with this idea. And this approach is not an ethnographic approach, right? Since ethnographic means you come to a field without any presumptions about a particular design solution. So you go to the field and see things emerge, or see where the problems really takes place. And from there, you kind of summarize the findings and kind of find a design solution to resolve the problems that really takes place within in the situations of human social interactions, or the human interact with the service, with the artifacts or the environment, right? So this is kind of ethnographic approach, and so but contextual inquiry. Let's get back to contextual inquiry. So contextual inquiry has some similarity with ethnography, and there are also some differences between the two. So the similarity between contextual inquiry and ethnographic, you can see here. So the similarity is they all study user or clients in place, and they try to capture reality of culture, user culture, and the work practice. And the difference between the two is ethnographic is kind of open-ended. So you jump to the field without preparing anything. So it's kind of a grounded theory approach. But contextual inquiry, normally when we go to the field, then we have prepare some questions, or we already know what we try to look for. So we already have some idea about what the problems we try to resolve, and we try to look for the problems that takes place in the field. So the contextual inquiry is not really open-ended. So and also contextual inquiry, normally the investigator, the designers, they have a particular focus. They have some questions they want to resolve. So, and also the goal of contextual inquiry is to find a right design solution. For our workshop, the case is we want to identify a good service to resolve a particular problem. So there are two principles of contextual inquiry. And so the first is to carry out in what context. So the first principle is that our goal to conduct a contextual inquiry is not to understand how clients they interact. It's not how to understand how clients interact with each touch point, but our real purpose is to understand how can we propose a solution to help clients better interacting with the service. So we are not trying to see, okay, so how the clients they come in and to really interact with the stuff, the touch points or our service or our service interface. We try to come up with a solution. That's the goal. So we don't want to know how the clients how they do their things in their environments. We try to find a solution for that. So that's our goal. And so we try to go to users, observe what's going on in the field, and we try to interview the clients and users when they are interacting with the service, and we try to discover some details. So this is first principle. And the second principle is partnership. So when you are doing a contextual inquiry, so the clients, your customers, they are your partners. So you have to think about that. So they are not participants. So they are your partners. So you have to adjust yourself. Like, don't separate yourself with the participants. So you want to think that, okay, so they are also part of the research and they are partners. And so like you have to adjust yourself, your mindset, your thoughts. So you have to like become like one part of the whole service. So pretending you are also a client in a service environment. So you are not really go there to do your research or going to do a design. So you are partners with your participants. So so your role is not passive. Like, okay, I ask you a question and you respond to the question, right? So you have to really involve yourself to the whole service environment, right? So actually you are there to try to improve the whole service, not try to finish your design projects. So I think about that, right? So participants, they are your partners, right? Okay, so we know some principles, and then we'll just get into observation. Okay, so since in contextual inquiry, basically it's kind of shadowing your participants, right? Right. So a major part of contextual inquiry involves observations, and so from a research standpoint or from a design project standpoint, so since the projects or research that we receive or we are working on, sometimes it really varies about different topics. So when do we really need observation? So when we are dealing with the research questions or any kind of research, the topic can vary, right? Right. So depending on questions that we are really going to understand. So there are some situations we need observations. So the first situation is when we are interested in how and what type of questions, like how users really interact with a service and how a service problem takes place in a particular environment. If you are understanding, if you try to know how and what type of questions, then in this situation you will need observations, right? So if you want to know how, but you use a survey, and you can imagine how much information you can get by understanding how a particular problems really occur in the real environment. So this will be a first situation. And the second is that the things that you're interested, the service problem you're interested are explored in the literature, right? So like you had done an extensive literature review, but you couldn't find information about specific event or specific problem, and so in that case you have to really go to the field and conduct observations to understand what the things happen. And the third is that you want to get a detailed information about how a particular problem really takes place. So you want to get detailed information, so for that case you need observation. And the fourth, you want to understand the phenomenon. So in this case you need observation. Right. If you want to understand a phenomenon, and if you conduct usability testing or study, or if you do a lab experiment, it's not going to help you to understand a phenomenon. So in that case, you need observations. And also, another case you need observations is that when self-reported data will be different from users' actual behavior. So, can you imagine that sometimes the professor, she gave a real good example yesterday. Right. So if you are studying people with special disease, right? So they will not tell you about information about that. That's one case that you really need to go to the field and to observe that the things will not reveal from the interview. Since sometimes if you go to the field and you can collect the data of their behavior to understand the situation, what happens. And I can give you an example. So if you are, okay, so yesterday we talked about car sharing service, right? Right, so if you are developing a car sharing service, and so you want to kind of understand your future clients' driving behavior, right? So if you want to understand that, their driving behavior, and then if you conduct interview, do you think it's going to work? Right, so if you ask any person, okay, are you a reckless driver? Definitely you say, oh, I'm not, right? Right, but if you conduct observations, seeing how they really drive on the road, then from their behavior you can tell whether or not he or she has a good driving behavior. So sometimes in this situation you will need to conduct observations. Or a lot of times the information you get cannot get from interviews or even from surveys, right? And another example I can give you is that if you are trying to develop a training service, safety training service for construction workers, right? And then okay, you think you conduct interview, they ask workers, okay, so do you follow safety procedures? They say, oh, of course, I follow safety procedures. I wear gloves and wear protections. Yeah, of course, the answers you can get are all positive. But actually, if you conduct observations, you can see when they are working, sometimes they don't wear gloves and they kind of skip a lot of safety rules. So for a lot of situations, you really need observation, and sometimes interviews do not give you good insights, right? So those are situations that you will need observation. All right, so now we decide we want to do observation. And before we do our observation, we have to have a plan regarding how we want to conduct observation more effectively, right? Since there are so many things you can observe, then if you want to take any information, you're going to be exhausted, right? So you need a plan regarding what you want to observe, how many people, things like that. So the first is you have to prepare like specific aspect of information or specific service problems you try to look at, and so you have to prepare some questions beforehand. And normally you have like get back to our yesterday's lecture. So we talk about the procedures regarding how to plan survey design projects. You have to have research questions like how a service problem takes place in the restaurants or something. You have to have a research questions in your mind. So from there, from the research questions, you will know you can prepare some questions which can help you to find answers to your research questions. So actually research question is different from the questions you prepare for the interview, right? So there is some difference. Research question is different from the questions you use, right? The question used help you answer your research question, right? So there's difference between them. So you identify 3 or 5 areas, like 3 or 5 areas that service problem is most likely to take place. So you prepare 3 to 5 areas. So when you go to the field, maybe what areas you couldn't find any problems, but you still have some areas, right? So you still have some areas related problems that you can use, right? And of course, if you find something different, you can adjust your questions very quick, right? So So sometimes we'll do a pilot study, right, to kind of modify your questions you use in the field, right? So sometimes we'll only conduct only one person contextual inquiry or one person observation. So go to the field, but the purpose of the pilot study is to shape, to modify our question, right? So that we can kind of come up with correct answer questions for the future study, right? And also, this part just describe you have to decide the logistics of the whole observations. You have to talk to your participants and see which methods, which observation techniques they feel the most comfortable with. Right? Some people they are not comfortable with a video camera and kind of capturing details of their behavior. Right? And some people they are okay, but some people they are not okay with that. And some people they are not very comfortable with your audio record. And in that case, maybe you take notes, but some people they are fine with it. So you have to really negotiate with your participants. Right. So those are some things that you can use, devices you can use when you do observation. And then regarding the length of time, do you have any idea about the length of time for observation? Like how long do you think would be enough for observation? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1 hour, 2 hours?
Anticipation say, no, no pardon.
Yeah. Any idea about the length of time? Just any idea is fine. I mean, of course, there's no correct answer for that, but I think the rule of thumb is that at least over 1 hour. Right. But okay, so if the problems you are investigating, the service problem you are investigating is really common, right? So in that case, it means that the problems occur again and again. So you don't need to do like a whole day observations and seeing the things happening so many times, right? So in that case, you maybe only need to conduct observations for 1 hour, 2 hours. That should be fine. And sometimes if the problems does not reveal constantly, you need a longer time in order to detect a particular service problem, right? So it really depends, right? So regarding your projects, the education, and this team, I'm not sure what's final decision of your topic would be, but just right, okay. Right, it really depends on the project. Yeah, depending on your topic. So you have to think about that and determine, okay, so how much time will be enough for you in order to detect the problem. And I'll talk about this the next slide. So what about the number of participants? How many people do you think will be enough for observation? 1 or 2, 3, 4, 10?
I think it all depends.
Yeah, it depends. Right, but some people will say, okay, the more the better. But the more the better, it means that we have to devote a lot of time, right? Yeah, but normally we don't have the luxury of time, so any answers?
Only most researchers they conducted the direct observation to 18 to 10 people.
Say again, 18 to 20 about what?
Direct observation.
Direct observation, 18 to 20.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. In HCI course, if we over the 15, then the result is almost visible.
the result is almost what?
With the observative research is getting similar if over 15 aspects.
I think almost get the right answer. Right. But, all right, so actually there's a theoretical saturation point. What do I mean theoretical saturation point is that if actually there's no answer for the number. Right, but you say 15 to 20, maybe some people conduct research about that, but I mean in the real world, there's no correct answer for that. And so, but you are correct that there's a theoretical saturation point. And what do I mean for theoretical saturation point? The meaning is that when you conduct additional observations and you will not get any additional insights, that's the point where you stop. Right. So it's when you see things happen again and again, do you need to conduct one more observation? No, right? Since you already get a whole picture about the problem, that's what you need. And you already get what you need, so why bother interview or observation up to 20? Maybe you can get the answer by 10 or by 7. And that's enough. Like, but that's what I say, the theoretical saturation point. So when you get to the point, and you can just stop. Right. So there's no correct number for that. So that's the number of placements. So but for the service design projects, maybe you can observe 1 or 2, it should be fine. Right. Just if we don't have that much time. Yeah, and for the group, you want to go to airport. So maybe you already spend so much time for the traveling, so maybe you don't need to observe that many. Yeah. So any questions about here? Okay, so regarding your role as an observer, so actually the role you can take can go from here, there. Right. So here means the active observation. So you kind of say you shadow a person, right? So just follow him all the time. So this will be an active observation. And here, on the other side, is passive observations. It means that you are physically in the same environment, but you are not with your participants. So you can maybe just stand away and kind of see what he or she is doing. Right. So it really depends which role you want to take. And I think you have to negotiate with your participants and find out which way your participants feel most comfortable. Right. If they're comfortable with you follow them all the time, you can do that. But if they are not comfortable with it, then you have to kind of adjust yourself as an observer, and so it really depends. So you can take your role as a passive observer or active observer. Right. So for a passive observer, you kind of passive observe and kind of you will ask for correlation at the end of the day, since you do not really follow the person or people. So you kind of stay away and do observations. So definitely you want to ask questions at the end of the observations. So, and also you just jot down the task and the user perform the work. So later on, if you record some video and you can just get back to the video and with the users and see why the problems occur. And if you do active observation, so sometimes you can encourage users to talk about a particular problem when they interact with the service. Or you can ask questions since you are with them. And of course you have to put down the insights you get in real time. Right. Okay, so what are information you are looking for in observation? First is the behavior pattern, right? So you see the problem, service problem occur again. So that's becoming a pattern. So definitely this information is important to address your research question. And then, of course, second is that the things related to your research questions, definitely those are things you have to really record. And also the factors that can contribute to answering your research questions or the problems you're interested in. So those factors, you have to also record them. So because those factors will influence the quality of the service. So some of the factors, any factors will contribute to that, then you definitely want to include them in your notes. And also, of course, follow-up questions are very important since whenever you observe a particular service problem, a particular touch points, how the problem takes place, then sometimes you have to ask questions, right? So when those are questions that you can use for follow-up questions. Like how do you feel about, right? So whenever you see users, they have some facial change when they are interacting with a touch point, then you can ask about how do you feel about something. Of course, I noticed that you were not happy or you are very happy about something. And second is what is frustrating you about, right? So users or clients, when they're interacting with a particular touch point or something, and you see they are dealing with a particular touch point for a certain amount of time, so it means that something happened, something wrong. So you have to identify that, like when you're doing observations. And also, you can also ask them about how you compare one thing with another, right? So maybe there's some solution or there are some other services existing, and you see a very poor service, a touch point, and maybe you can also ask how do you compare with this idea with another idea, things like that. And also, you can ask why they just do that. Like for example, if you are developing like a website services for like managing online account or something, and or managing their like alright. So if you are developing an e-learning service on the internet, right? And so in that case, you see maybe the parents or the kids, maybe the parents, they will manage the information on the e-learning website, and then so whenever you find the parents, they have dealing with some problems, and it took them so much time or something, then definitely want to ask why, like they keep creating folders for a particular material or something, then you have to ask why do you keep doing that, or why they're deleting a lot of materials, and when they are trying to engage with something and it takes so much time, you definitely want to ask why. So, and also another question is what do you try to accomplish? So those are questions that are useful for you, which you can use to create out the questions that you find in observation. Do you want to take a break or continue? We can move on. Yeah.